Her family mocked me with cold food, a plate of leftovers, and polite smiles. I smiled back, quietly placing a golden box on their table. The moment it opened, every word in the room died. From the moment the laughter faded, a quiet tension settled over the grand hall, ignored by most. Golden light from the immense chandelier spilled onto polished tables, illuminating the remnants of a lavish feast. At a small, almost forgotten table near the kitchen entrance, Elena sat alone. Her plate held a meager assortment of cold vegetables and a solitary sliver of dried chicken. Leftovers, on her daughter's wedding day, this was her silent portion, a calculated slight. Across the opulent room, the groom's mother, Martha, raised a champagne flute, her smile wide and undeniably self-satisfied. Her husband, Richard, chuckled softly beside her, their words carrying across the distance like a subtle, mocking hum. Elena watched them, her gaze steady, unblinking, taking in their proud, dismissive air. She lifted her fork, each movement slow, deliberate. The food tasted like ash, yet she chewed with an almost ritualistic calm, her expression unreadable. Her hands, though outwardly still, felt the faint tremor of something deeper, a memory of countless early mornings and quiet sacrifices. She remembered the unwavering dignity she had always carried, now tested in this opulent space. A young server, his face etched with a fleeting apology, paused beside her, offering a fresh bread roll. Elena offered a small, polite nod, declining the gesture with a gentle wave of her hand. The unspoken understanding passed between them. Beneath the linen tablecloth, a small, intricately carved golden box rested against her ankle. It was cool against her skin, a tangible, significant weight. The box felt silent, deliberate, as if holding the very breath of the room within its polished surface, a vessel for the unspoken. This was not about revenge, but about the undeniable truth of this day, of their lives, and of what had been quietly endured. It was the golden box of truth, waiting. She took another slow bite, her eyes momentarily closing, savoring the bitter taste. The celebration continued around her, a symphony of joy and oblivious chatter, yet a different current flowed. The quiet power emanating from Elena was palpable, a silent, unwavering promise. Before the night ends, the golden box will open. For now, the truth remains waiting. From the moment the laughter faded, sharp and unyielding, on that gilded wedding day, she knew her place. The memory of the previous night, of the cold reception and dismissive glances, still clung to her like a shroud. This was her daughter's triumph, yet it felt like her own quiet exile. The grand ballroom shimmered with 1,000 tiny lights, each one a star in a constellation of curated joy. Chandeliers, heavy with crystal, dripped light onto polished marble floors where guests glided, their faces alight with practiced smiles. The air, thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume, felt surprisingly cold against her skin. She sat at a small round table tucked away near a service entrance, an island in a vast, celebratory ocean. Her silk dress, carefully chosen, felt suddenly too simple, almost an apology. The serving staff moved with elegant precision, a ballet of silver trays and clinking glasses. They served the head table first, then the closest relatives of the groom, their laughter echoing like sharp crystal. Then the bride's few distant aunts, then the friends, a cascade of courses. Her plate arrived last, almost an afterthought, placed with a polite but impersonal efficiency. Cold canapes and wilting greens, a stark contrast to the lavish plates parading past her. The clatter of cutlery, the murmur of happy conversation, seemed to mock her quiet dignity. She picked at her food, each bite tasteless. Her daughter, Anya, radiant in white lace, caught her eye from the elevated bridal table. For a fleeting second, their gazes locked across the expanse of linen and flowers. A flicker of something, regret perhaps, or a deep, burning shame, crossed Anya's face. Her daughter's smile faltered, just a fraction, before her eyes dropped, seeking refuge in the elaborate floral centerpiece. The mother offered a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of the chasm that had opened between them. Beneath her own chair, nestled against her ankle, the golden box sat. It felt solid, a quiet anchor in this swirling, superficial world. It pulsed with a faint internal light, a subtle shimmer that only she seemed to perceive, as if holding a secret heartbeat, a promise of balance yet to come. It was the weight of a lifetime, not just a trinket. She remembered other feasts, long ago, in a small kitchen filled with the comforting scent of her own simple cooking. Anya, a child then, would watch her with wide-eyed adoration, her face smeared with flour, not this veiled embarrassment. They had built a life together, just the two of them, brick by careful brick, through lean years and quiet triumphs. The image of Anya's hand, small and trusting, clasped in her own, flashed through her mind. The groom's mother, Ilara, elegant and impossibly poised, had often spoken of standards, of expectations, during their early meetings. Her words, always delivered with a saccharine smile, had carried a hidden blade. Anya is marrying into a good family, a proper times family. Ilara had once purred over tea, her gaze lingering on the mother's worn hands. She deserves the best, after everything. Those veiled remarks had always cut deep, severing the threads of their modest life, subtly undermining the mother's efforts. This opulent hall, this grand display of wealth, felt like the culmination of every whispered judgment, every dismissive glance. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken history, with years of subtle slights. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, the cacophony of celebration receding. She wasn't an uninvited guest, not truly. She was Anya's mother. Her presence here was a testament to love, to sacrifice, to a quiet strength that had weathered storms Ilara could never comprehend. The glitter around her, the superficial shine, seemed to dim, becoming merely a backdrop to her inner resolve. This was not about anger, not about a petty act of revenge. This was about truth, about the dignity she had fought for, the respect Anya deserved to understand. The box was not a weapon, but a mirror, reflecting what had been hidden. A distant cousin, perhaps, or an acquaintance of the groom's family, paused beside her table. "Enjoying yourself?" the woman asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, a hint of condescension in her tone. The mother simply inclined her head, a silent acknowledgement of the chasm between them, a quiet refusal to engage in their shallow games. Words felt unnecessary, almost vulgar, in this space. Her gaze drifted back to Anya, whose head was bowed, listening to the groom's father speak, a forced smile on her lips. She saw the tension in her daughter's shoulders, the fragile balance Anya was trying to maintain. The music swelled again, a triumphant symphony, pulling everyone into its joyous current, leaving her in a quiet eddy. And there, in that stillness, the promise of the golden box began to gather its strength, waiting for the moment when all veneers would shatter. The polished gleam of the wedding hall, the scent of white lilies, could not entirely mask the ghosts that lingered. Even on my daughter's wedding day, the memory of those lean years returned, sharp as a winter wind, a stark contrast to the current joy, a quiet counterpoint to the celebratory music. She remembered the deep, pervasive chill that seeped into her very bones, not just from the biting cold nights, but from the quiet, hollow, pervasive absence. Her husband's abrupt, unexplained departure had left an empty space, a gaping, raw financial wound filled with stacks of unpaid bills and a torrent of unspoken questions. The small, worn, perpetually damp apartment above the neighborhood laundromat became their unintended fortress, their refuge. The rhythmic, almost hypnotic thrum of the industrial washing machines was the constant, low, grinding soundtrack to their reinvented, solitary lives. Every single evening, the heavy, cloying, yet strangely comforting smell of cheap fabric softener clung persistently to her clothes, a constant, almost suffocating reminder of endless, backbreaking shifts and the unforgiving passage of time. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes even 3, stringing together a meager, precarious existence. Her hands, once soft and unblemished, grew rough, chapped, and calloused from scrubbing stubborn stains, from meticulously folding mountains of strangers' intimate laundry, each garment holding a faint echo of another life. The laundromat's thick, humid steam often fogged the large plate-glass windows, blurring the harsh, indifferent world outside, making their small, isolated existence feel both confined and strangely safe, a world unto themselves. Dignity. She would often whisper to her little girl, her voice soft but firm, imbued with an unshakable conviction. Is the one thing no one can ever truly take from you. Hold on to it with everything you have. It was more than a phrase. It was a whispered prayer, a vital, invisible shield against the world's casual cruelty and its quick, unforgiving judgments. The daughter, a small, quiet shadow, would often watch her mother, sometimes helping to meticulously sort mismatched socks, her tiny, trusting fingers mimicking the careful, weary movements. They shared silent, often frugal meals, the soft, metallic clinking of forks against plates echoing slightly in the otherwise quiet, sparsely furnished room. Money was always painfully tight, a constant, gnawing worry that tightened her chest, a knot of anxiety that never fully unraveled. She learned, out of sheer necessity, to stretch every single dollar until it screamed, to mend torn clothes rather than replace them, to find genuine, unburdened joy in small, free moments. A slow, sun-drenched walk through the dusty park, a shared, whispered story before bed, a hand-me-down book read aloud by the dim, comforting lamplight. These were their precious, hard-won treasures, moments that felt like golden dust. She carried the immense weight of their survival, a quiet, unyielding burden that never truly left her, settling deep in her shoulders. The early mornings were the worst, before the first customers arrived, when the laundromat was cold, cavernous, and empty. The scent of stale detergent, damp fabric, and a faint metallic tang hung heavy in the air, a familiar, almost suffocating perfume. She'd wipe down the cold, hard machines, feeling the unyielding steel beneath her palm, imagining the countless, anonymous lives that passed through this very space, each leaving a faint, intangible trace. The city outside was still mostly asleep, its deep, profound silence a brief, precious comfort before the day's relentless, demanding rhythm began. The simple, almost sacred act of brewing her strong black coffee, the bitter, invigorating scent filling the small, cramped kitchen, felt less like a habit and more like a quiet, daily ritual of defiance, a small victory against the overwhelming odds. She remembered vividly the way her daughter would sometimes press her small, warm cheek against her mother's tired leg, a silent, profound offering of comfort and understanding. In those fleeting moments, the bone-deep exhaustion would recede, replaced by a fierce, protective, almost primal love. She saw in her daughter's innocent face not just a child, but a future, a powerful, undeniable reason to push harder, to endure every single hardship. The debt was a heavy, suffocating cloak that threatened to smother them both. But her daughter's bright, curious, unwavering eyes were the unwavering sun rising, promising warmth and new beginnings, in a beacon of hope. She built a life from the very ashes of her past, brick by painstaking brick, fueled by a love that burned brighter and more enduringly than any hardship or despair. Her life then felt as though she were meticulously weaving a complex, intricate tapestry from broken, disparate threads, each carefully tied knot a silent, unbreakable promise, each vibrant color a profound, often unseen sacrifice, a testament to her will. The nights were interminably long, often illuminated only by the single bare bulb in the laundry room, the monotonous hum of the dryers a constant, droning companion. She'd think of her daughter sleeping soundly upstairs, her small chest rising and falling with innocent breath, and a fresh wave of unwavering determination would wash over her. Dignity wasn't just a word, it was the way she carried herself, head held high, the way she met the unwavering gaze of the landlord, the way she steadfastly refused to let the crushing circumstances define them. It was the quiet, inner strength that allowed her to offer a genuine smile, even when her heart ached with a profound, unspoken sorrow. This strength, she knew with absolute certainty, was her most valuable inheritance to her daughter, far more precious than any fleeting material wealth. It was the unshakable foundation upon which everything else, including the very idea of a golden box of truth, would ultimately be built. The vision of her daughter's future, bright and unburdened, fueled every sacrifice. And in that quiet, unyielding strength, born from struggle and whispered promises, the seeds of a different kind of truth began to slowly, irrevocably grow, waiting patiently for its destined moment to emerge. The memory of that quiet afternoon returns, a stark contrast to the later cacophony of the wedding hall, where every sound would be amplified. You remember the way the light fell, soft and hesitant, through the lace curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, hopeful spirits. It was the calm before a storm, a stillness pregnant with unspoken expectations and judgments. The golden box, then merely a promise, lay heavy in her lap, a tangible weight against her worn cotton dress. It was a secret held close, a quiet defiance against the noise yet to come, a testament to a life lived with dignity. A sleek, dark sedan, too polished, too imposing for this narrow, tree-lined street, pulled up to the curb. Its engine hummed a low, expensive purr that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of her modest home. The doors opened with a soft click, and a quartet of figures emerged, their expensive fabrics rustling. Their smiles, bright and meticulously composed, seemed to arrive before they did, a practiced artifice. The groom's mother, elegant in a tailored silk suit of muted gray, extended a gloved hand. Her grip was firm, almost possessive, yet her eyes, sharp and assessing, moved past the mother's face, scanning every detail of the modest living room. It was a glance that stripped away years of careful tending, reducing her home to mere square footage. Such a charming home. The mother-in-law purred, her voice a smooth, cultured tone that seemed to echo in the small space. Her gaze lingered on the slightly worn edges of the sofa, the faded patterns of the rug, the carefully chosen, simple decorations. So, cozy, intimate. Each word, seemingly complimentary, carried a subtle undertone of dismissal. Her husband, a man of imposing stature, nodded once. A tight, approving gesture that felt more like an inventory check than genuine appreciation. The son, the groom, offered a quick, almost apologetic smile to his future mother-in-law, his discomfort a fleeting shadow across his otherwise confident face. His two sisters, sleek figures in designer casual wear, exchanged glances that spoke volumes without a single sound. They admired the small, framed photographs on the mantelpiece, their fingers brushing the dust-free surfaces, as if testing for imperfections, for any sign of neglect. Every corner seemed to be mentally catalogued, every humble possession weighed against an invisible scale of wealth and status. She stood rooted, a quiet sentinel in her own space, her back straight, her chin held high. Her hands, calloused from decades of mending and cleaning, found the familiar cool metal of the golden box. She ran a thumb over its intricate carvings, tracing the delicate patterns, a silent ritual of grounding herself. It was a gift for her daughter, yes, but also a vessel for something far more profound. A vessel for truths carefully gathered, patiently held through decades of struggle, quiet pride, and unwavering love. The box was small enough to fit in a clutch bag, yet its weight felt substantial, as if it contained not just memories, but the very essence of time itself, the accumulated wisdom of her life. She moved to the small kitchen table, picking up a stack of delicate linen napkins she had embroidered herself. Her movements were precise, her focus unwavering as she began to fold them, each crease a testament to her meticulous nature, her quiet strength, the crisp fabric smoothed beneath her fingers, mirroring the quiet control she exerted over her own composure, a shield against their subtle, insidious scrutiny. Her daughter, oblivious to the deeper currents, was likely still preparing, somewhere upstairs, dreaming of a perfect day. "We are so incredibly excited for the wedding," the groom's father announced, his voice booming slightly in the small, quiet room, filling the space with an almost aggressive cheer that felt out of place. "Our son has certainly made an interesting choice, unique." He paused, a beat too long, allowing the unspoken implications to hang in the air like a heavy, unwelcome scent, mingling with the expensive perfumes of the visitors. "Our daughter is a good woman," she replied, her voice soft but firm, a quiet strength that did not seek to match his volume, but rather to ground it, to assert a simple, undeniable truth. She offered them tea, a simple gesture of hospitality, the aroma of jasmine and green tea beginning to fill the room, a humble offering against their opulent airs. Of course," the mother-in-law interjected, her smile fixed, a porcelain mask that never quite reached her eyes. "We simply want the absolute best for them both. A strong foundation is paramount." Her eyes swept over the room again, a slow, deliberate survey, as if assessing that very foundation, finding it perhaps wanting, perhaps insufficient for their grand expectations. The silence that followed was thick, punctuated only by the clinking of teacups, a fragile sound in the charged atmosphere. The air in the room thickened, as if the unspoken words and judgments were physical entities pressing down on them all, making breathing a conscious effort, a subtle struggle for space. She felt the subtle shift in their posture, the almost imperceptible tightening of their smiles, the way their gazes lingered on anything that hinted at a life less grand than their own. Each polite word was a layer of varnish, carefully applied, hiding the true grain of their intentions beneath. She understood their game, their subtle ways of asserting dominance, but she would not yield. She poured the tea, the steam rising in delicate tendrils, a momentary veil between her and their scrutinizing gazes. The golden box remained in her lap, a silent, weighty presence, its ornate surface reflecting the soft afternoon light. For now, its secrets remained tightly sealed, waiting for the perfect moment to be revealed, waiting for the truth to finally shine. On that wedding day, the grand hall shimmered with a deceptive light. The air buzzed with 1,000 conversations, each word a tiny, celebratory chime. Cameras flashed, capturing smiles that felt both genuine and carefully placed. Anna, radiant in white, moved through the crowd, her laughter echoing, a sound her mother, Martha, cherished deeply. Martha watched from her table, a quiet observer of the joyous chaos. She saw her daughter's future, bright and promising, unfolding before her eyes. For a moment, the past faded, replaced by the warmth of this present joy. The main course arrived, a symphony of silver cloches and attentive waiters. Each table received its steaming, artfully arranged plates. Martha's gaze followed the procession, a faint smile touching her lips. Then, Eleanor, the groom's mother, approached Martha's table. Her steps were deliberate, her expression unreadable beneath a veneer of polite cheer. Eleanor carried a single plate, not on a silver tray, but held casually in her hand. The other guests continued their animated chatter, oblivious to the subtle shift in the room's energy. Eleanor slid the plate onto the pristine white linen before Martha. The clatter was barely audible, yet it resonated like a gong in Martha's ears. On the plate lay a small, congealed piece of chicken, a few wilted greens, and a dollop of hardened mashed potatoes. The food was undeniably cold, a stark contrast to the fragrant, steaming dishes served to everyone else. Time seemed to stretch, the vibrant sounds of the feast suddenly muted. Martha's eyes registered the meager offering, then lifted slowly to Eleanor's face. Eleanor offered a small, knowing smile, her eyes holding a glint of triumph. Anna, across the room, had been mid-sentence, her hand resting on her new husband's arm, her head turned, drawn by an invisible thread towards her mother's table. She saw the plate, the cold, forgotten meal. Her laughter died in her throat, replaced by a sudden, icy dread. Her body froze, a statue in the midst of a celebration. A knot tightened in her stomach, a familiar ache of helplessness. She wanted to rush to her mother, to intervene, to scream. Yet, she remained rooted, a silent witness to the quiet injustice. Martha's hand reached for her fork, her movements slow and deliberate. Her fingers closed around the handle, a steady, unyielding grip, no tremor, no hesitation. She remembered other meals, sparse and cold, eaten in silence during harder times. This was not new, only the setting had changed. She looked at the plate, then back at Eleanor, her expression calm, impenetrable. The noise of the room returned, a distant hum, as if the world had momentarily paused just for her. She cut a small piece of the cold chicken, her knife scraping softly against the ceramic. The sound was sharp in the sudden clarity of her perception. She lifted the fork, bringing the food to her lips. Her jaw worked slowly, gracefully, as she chewed. Each movement was precise, controlled, a silent declaration. She tasted the chill, the lack of flavor, but her face betrayed nothing. There were no tears in her eyes, no harsh words on her tongue, only a quiet, resolute defiance that settled deep within her bones. The act was simple, yet profound. It was not an acceptance of the slight, but a refusal to be diminished by it. Her gaze held Eleanor's for a long moment, a silent conversation passing between them. Eleanor's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. The air thickened with unspoken tension. Martha swallowed, her throat dry, but her resolve unwavering. She had faced far greater hunger, far colder indifference. This small public humiliation would not break her. Anna watched, her heart aching with a mixture of shame and fierce pride. She saw not a victim, but a warrior. Her mother's grace in the face of such a deliberate insult was a lesson in itself. The cold food became a symbol, a gauntlet thrown, and Martha had picked it up with quiet dignity. The golden box, hidden away, still held its secrets, but tonight, a different kind of truth was being revealed, one bite at a time. The room held its breath, though no one else seemed to notice. In the quiet that settled after the last toast, a subtle shift rippled through the grand hall. The lively string quartet softened its melody, the notes becoming a gentle, almost mournful hum. Sunlight, now fading through the tall windows, cast long, golden streaks across the polished floor. She felt the change, a collective holding of breath, even before she moved. Her chair scraped faintly as she rose, a sound barely audible above the lingering murmur of conversation. Her movements were slow, deliberate, each gesture imbued with a profound, unyielding purpose. Her gaze, steady and clear, swept across the faces of the guests, lingering for a moment on her daughter, then on the groom's parents at the main table. The golden box, resting on the empty chair beside her, seemed to pulse faintly in the dimming light. She reached for it, her fingers closing around its cool, smooth surface. The weight was familiar, a comforting anchor in her hand. She began her walk. The distance to the main table was not great, yet it felt like miles. Each step resonated with a quiet power, a measured tread that drew every eye in the room. Whispers followed her, soft as rustling silk, then faded into a profound hush. You could feel the tension rising, a palpable current in the air, as if an invisible thread connected her to every guest. She passed rows of elegantly dressed figures, their smiles faltering, replaced by expressions of curiosity, then dawning apprehension. Some leaned forward, others sat back, their champagne flutes forgotten. She remembered the day she first held this box, years ago, a gift from her own mother. It had been empty then, a promise of stories yet to be filled. Now, it carried the weight of a lifetime, a testament to resilience, to quiet suffering, and to an unwavering love. The scent of lilies from the floral arrangements mingled with the faint, sweet aroma of the wedding cake, a poignant contrast to the gravity of her errand. The groom's parents, seated at the head table, initially exchanged a confused glance. Their smiles, carefully constructed for the occasion, began to waver as she approached. The groom's father, a man of imposing stature, adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture. His wife, usually composed, shifted uncomfortably in her opulent gown, her eyes narrowing slightly. They had not anticipated this. No one had. She reached the table, pausing directly before them. The golden box, held firmly in her hands, seemed to glow with an inner light. She offered no greeting, no explanation. Her expression was unreadable, a serene mask that betrayed none of the turmoil within. With a slow, fluid motion, she extended her arms, placing the box gently on the pristine white tablecloth between them. The soft thud of the gold against the linen seemed to echo through the suddenly silent hall. The box sat there, a solitary, gleaming object. It was not a gift, it was not a threat. It was an offering, heavy with unspoken history, a silent challenge. The groom's parents stared at it, then at her, their faces a mixture of bewilderment and growing unease. The air thickened around them, laden with unspoken questions. She offered them a small, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of finality, before turning to walk back to her seat. The room held its breath. In the quiet anticipation of the golden box's unveiling, a memory stirred, sharp and clear, from a day 2 decades past. It was a Tuesday, the air thick with unspoken promises and unspoken threats, a day that felt ordinary but carried the seed of devastation. The weight of that distant day pressed on her, even now, amidst the celebratory hum of her daughter's wedding, a stark contrast to the silence of her past. The golden box, sitting on its velvet cushion, held more than just a brittle piece of paper. It held the echo of a predatory smile, frozen in time. Her husband, then a man in his late 30s, sat across a polished mahogany desk, its surface gleaming under the afternoon light. He was a good man, honest to a fault, perhaps too trusting of outstretched hands and smooth words. His tie was slightly askew, a telltale sign of a long, tiring day spent earning an honest living. His brow furrowed with a mild, almost imperceptible unease he couldn't quite articulate. Facing him was Mr. Davies, the groom's father, a figure of effortless charm and calculated composure. Mr. Davies radiated an easy confidence, his tailored suit impeccable, his gaze unwavering, a predator in a finely woven disguise. Sunlight streamed through a tall window, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding, to the fate being sealed. Mr. Davies gestured with a pen, its gold tip glinting, a subtle, irresistible lure. "Just a formality, my friend," Mr. Davies had said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, a balm to any lingering doubt, designed to lull and disarm. "A minor adjustment to the terms we discussed previously. Nothing to worry about, purely administrative, a simple update." Her husband, trusting and weary from endless hours of physical work, barely glanced at the dense, small-print legal text. His mind was already on dinner, on the children, on the simple comfort of home. He simply wanted to go home, to rest. He took the pen, the cool metal, a stark contrast to the warmth of his calloused hand. His signature, usually neat and deliberate, wavered slightly on the dotted line, a fleeting premonition he could not grasp, a whisper of future sorrow. Davies watched him, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. It was a smile of quiet, absolute triumph, hidden just beneath the surface of his genial expression, a silent declaration of victory. That signature, small and unassuming, became the anchor of their slow, agonizing undoing, a single mark that unraveled everything. It was a contract, deceptively simple in its language, yet devastating in its implications, a trap laid with meticulous precision. It slowly but surely unraveled the secure, comfortable fabric of their lives. The small house, a home built with decades of careful saving, shared dreams, and countless sacrifices, slipped through their fingers like fine, elusive sand. Each room, once filled with the vibrant echoes of children's laughter, faded into a profound, aching silence. The scent of her baking, the warmth of their shared meals, all became ghosts. The garden, once a riot of color and life, withered under the relentless weight of financial strain and mounting debt. Peace became a distant, unattainable memory, replaced by the constant, relentless gnaw of anxiety, a dull ache that never truly subsided. She remembered the nights, long and silent, spent staring at the ceiling, listening to her husband's quiet despair as the true, brutal nature of the deal slowly unfolded around them, crushing their spirit. Her husband, broken by the betrayal, carried the unspoken burden of his unwitting mistake, a heavy cloak of guilt. The weight of that profound loss never truly lifted. It became a part of her very being. It settled deep within her, a quiet resolve hardening over the years, shaping her into the woman she was today. This was not about vengeance, a raw, destructive emotion she had long discarded, but about bringing a hidden, carefully buried truth into the light. It was about restoring a dignity that had been stolen, not just from them, but from the very idea of honest labor and trust. On her daughter's wedding day, surrounded by such opulence and joy, the irony felt almost unbearably poetic, a cruel twist of fate. The very man who had orchestrated their downfall, who had profited shamelessly from their misfortune, now sat at the head table, a respected guest, watching his son marry her daughter. The air in the reception hall felt thick with this unspoken history, a silent hum beneath the joyful music, a tension only she could truly feel. The folded paper, brittle with age and the relentless passage of time, lay inside the golden box. It was the original document, meticulously retrieved years later from dusty archives, a tangible, damning testament to a quiet, calculated betrayal. Its very presence felt heavy, imbued with the unspoken tears, the quiet struggles, and the enduring resilience of 2 decades. Its edges were sharp, almost cutting, a silent, constant reminder of how easily trust could be broken, how quickly a life could be overturned by a single, misplaced mark, a moment of misplaced faith. The ink had faded slightly, blurring the precise lines of the signatures, but the words, the terms, remained stark, clear, and utterly unforgiving. It was the silent witness to their shattered dreams. She imagined the signature, her husband's innocent mark, glowing faintly in the darkness of the box, waiting for the precise moment to be seen, to be understood. It was as though the paper itself pulsed with a dormant, ancient energy, a long-held breath, ready to awaken and reveal its long-held secret to a new generation. The air around the box seemed to thicken, charged with the past, with anticipation. For now, the truth remains waiting. From the moment the golden box settled open, a subtle shift rippled through the grand hall. A quiet power, long held dormant, began to unfurl, casting long shadows on the polished marble floors. This was the wedding day, yes, but also the day the truth would finally step into the light, carried by the very item meant to symbolize a mother's quiet resolve. Her fingers, steady and unhurried, reached inside the box's velvet lining. She retrieved a stack of neatly folded letters, their edges softened with age. The first letter, a heavy cream parchment, bore a familiar signature. The groom's father, M.R. Thompson, watched, his breath catching in his throat. His usually ruddy complexion began to drain of color, replaced by an ashen pallor. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the paper, as if trying to decipher its secrets from across the room. Then came the photographs. One showed M.R. Thompson with a woman, not his wife, in a setting far from their family home. Another depicted a lavish property, its ownership details clearly visible on an accompanying receipt. The documents, crisp and undeniable, spoke volumes without a single word being uttered aloud. They were mirrors of betrayal, reflecting back years of hidden dealings, of promises broken and trust shattered. Anna, the bride, gasped, a sharp, involuntary sound that pierced the sudden, heavy silence. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. She looked from the photographs to her father-in-law, then to her own husband, whose face was now a mask of confusion and growing dread. He had no answers, only a terrible understanding blooming in his gaze. The room, which moments before had echoed with joyous laughter and clinking glasses, now forgot how to breathe. Heads turned, whispers started, hushed and urgent, like a wave receding from the shore. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, their smiles fading into expressions of shock and disbelief. The air grew thick, charged with an unspoken tension, a collective gasp held suspended. She presented another document, a receipt for a substantial sum, dated just weeks before the wedding. It detailed a transfer of funds from M.R. Thompson's private account to a shell company, a company that, a separate letter revealed, was secretly owned by her own husband, Mark. This was the final, devastating piece of the puzzle, revealing not just the father's deceit, but the son's complicity, a quiet pact to exploit her daughter's inheritance. The groom's father slumped back in his chair, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly his knuckles turned white. His mouth opened, but no sound emerged, only a dry, rasping breath. His carefully constructed facade, built over decades, crumbled before everyone's eyes. The golden box of truth had indeed opened, and its contents were now undeniable. The truth was no longer whispered in shadows. It stood starkly in the bright wedding light, as though a hidden curtain had been ripped away. The weight of what had been revealed pressed down on every soul in the room. For now, the silence held its terrible reign. The silence that descended after the golden box of truth opened was unlike any other. It was not the quiet of reverence, nor the hush of anticipation. Instead, it bore the cold, unyielding weight of revelation, a profound stillness that swallowed every previous sound, leaving only the chilling echo of what had been irrevocably exposed, a truth now undeniable. The final, lingering chord of the string quartet, a mournful, drawn-out note, dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind a sudden, jarring vacuum that seemed to suck the very air from the room. Violins lowered, bows resting against their strings, the musicians' faces mirroring the widespread, palpable shock that rippled visibly through the elegant hall. Forks, laden with carefully prepared morsels of salmon and asparagus, froze inches from expectant lips, suspended in a tableau of arrested motion. Tiny silver monuments to a celebration abruptly halted. The gentle clinking of crystal, the polite murmur of conversation, the rustle of silk and lace, the soft scrape of chairs, all abruptly ceased, as if a master switch had been thrown, plunging the hall into an unexpected, profound hush. 100 pairs of eyes, moments ago sparkling with the easy joy of celebration, now darted frantically, seeking any refuge from the collective discomfort. They fixated on the intricate floral patterns of the expensive china, the polished gleam of the silverware, the shimmering folds of the tablecloth, anywhere but the faces of their fellow guests, anywhere but the mother's steady, unwavering gaze. She sat at the head table, a figure of profound stillness amidst the sudden, chaotic paralysis. Her hands, clasped gently, rested upon the pristine white linen, her posture unwavering, her shoulders relaxed. No flicker of triumph touched her lips, no shadow of anger darkened her calm, steady eyes. Only an unyielding serenity resided there, the quiet, formidable power of a truth finally, irrevocably spoken. It was not a moment of vengeance, but of a long overdue, deeply personal reckoning, achieved with a quiet, unshakable dignity that commanded unwilling respect. For generations, these families had meticulously cultivated an image, dining on a rich banquet of their own pride, on the sweet, intoxicating illusion of their unquestionable social standing. Tonight, the menu had changed, drastically and without warning, served by an unseen hand, a dish no one had ordered, yet everyone was compelled to taste. Tonight, they tasted the sharp, metallic tang of humility, an unwelcome aftertaste clinging stubbornly to their palates, impossible to dislodge or ignore. A bitter pill swallowed in silence. She remembered countless indignities, small slights disguised as social custom, each one a subtle, insidious erosion of her dignity, chipping away at her spirit. Each dismissive glance, each condescending remark, each thinly veiled insult, had been a stone silently added to a cairn of unspoken pain and quiet endurance. Now, that cairn stood starkly revealed, its foundations exposed, its purpose undeniable, a monument to their collective oversight and her silent suffering. The opulent air of the grand hall, once vibrant with laughter and the easy flow of conversation, now felt thick, heavy, with unspoken accusations and collective discomfort. Every whispered word, every averted glance, every slight shift in a chair, became a silent acknowledgement of the seismic shift in their carefully constructed world. The mother watched them, not with judgment or malice, but with a quiet, almost melancholic understanding of human frailty, of the fragile nature of reputation and the heavy cost of pretense. Their discomfort was palpable, a physical weight pressing down on the room, suffocating the last vestiges of forced merriment. She felt no joy in their shame, only a profound, weary sense of completion, a burden finally lifted, replaced by a quiet, deep peace. Her daughter, seated beside the now ashen groom, slowly lifted her head, her movements deliberate, almost painful, as if breaking free from a long-held trance. Her gaze, wide and filled with a raw, dawning vulnerability, traversed the distance across the table, bypassing the stunned faces of the guests, finding her mother's. In that shared, silent moment, a lifetime of unspoken truths, of hidden sacrifices, of quiet resilience, of a mother's unwavering love and protective instinct, passed between them, a profound understanding blossoming. The daughter's jawline, usually soft and yielding, now held a newfound subtle firmness, a nascent strength emerging from the shock and the weight of realization. She saw her mother not just as a parent, but as a woman of immense, quiet courage, a guardian of truth who had endured so much. The groom's parents, moments ago the very picture of self-assured affluence and social grace, seemed to physically deflate, their postures collapsing inward, their carefully maintained composure utterly shattered. His father, whose booming laugh had so recently filled the room, now stared blankly at his untouched plate, his face a mask of disbelief, shame, and utter defeat, his hands trembling slightly beneath the table, betraying his inner turmoil. His mother, her elaborate coiffure suddenly askew, clutched her husband's arm, her knuckles white, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps, her eyes wide with a desperate, trapped animal fear, a fear of what came next. Their carefully constructed facade, built on generations of selective memory and quiet contempt, had crumbled into dust, leaving only the stark, undeniable reality of their exposed actions. The weight of their past decisions settled upon them, heavy and inescapable, crushing the last vestiges of their pride and pretense. The groom himself, pale and bewildered, could only stare between his new wife and his parents. A silent, agonizing chasm opening beneath his feet, a future suddenly uncertain and profoundly changed. The silence itself became a living entity, pressing down on every shoulder, whispering in every ear, a chilling echo of the golden box's devastating contents. It was as if the very air had been drained of its oxygen, leaving only the heavy, suffocating weight of consequence, making every breath a conscious, difficult effort, a struggle against the invisible pressure. The soft glow of the crystal chandeliers, once warm and inviting, now seemed to cast a harsh, unforgiving light on every flushed face, revealing every tremor of discomfort, every flicker of guilt, every raw, unvarnished emotion. The lingering scent of wilting roses and forgotten champagne mingled with something sharper, something akin to collective regret, unspoken shame, and the metallic tang of exposed secrets, a bitter perfume of truth. The distant murmur of city traffic from outside, usually imperceptible, now seemed to echo with a strange, almost alien clarity, a stark reminder of a world moving on, oblivious to the profound, frozen drama within these elegant, now suffocating walls. The elegant draperies, once a backdrop for joyous celebration, now felt like heavy velvet shrouds, trapping them all in this uncomfortable, revealing moment, waiting for the next breath, for the world to resume its spin. And in that quiet, every truth found its indelible mark, etched deeply into the fragile fabric of the night, forever changing its intricate weave and the lives it touched. In the quiet that descended after the golden box lay open, Amelia watched her mother walk away. A silent urgency pulled her. She followed the retreating figure down the long, ornate hallway. The sounds of the wedding reception faded behind them, replaced by the soft hum of the building. Her mother stopped near a tall, arched window. Evening light filtered through the stained glass, casting muted colors across their faces. Amelia's voice was a whisper, raw with confusion. "Why, Mama? Why now?" Her mother turned, eyes heavy with a pain Amelia had rarely seen. "Because you deserve the truth, my love." Her hand reached out, trembling slightly, to cup Amelia's cheek. Not their version of it. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, hot and unexpected. The weight of the evening, the humiliation, the shocking revelation pressed down on her. It felt cruel. "Honesty often does," her mother replied, her gaze unwavering. "Their wealth was built on lies, Amelia, on my suffering." She paused, searching her daughter's face. "I wanted you to see it all, to choose with open eyes." Amelia looked away, towards the distant city lights. The image of her fiancé's family, their faces contorted, flashed in her mind. Then, the memory of her mother's quiet dignity, serving the meager meal. She understood now. This was not about revenge, not truly. It was about reclaiming a narrative. It was about worth. "What do I do?" Amelia's voice cracked. Her mother's grip tightened on her arm, a silent anchor. "You choose what kind of life you want, what kind of love you deserve." She spoke softly, yet her words held the power of a lifetime's wisdom. "Do you want a life built on their pretense or on your own truth?" Amelia closed her eyes, a deep breath shuddering through her. The choice was stark. The image of a future, gilded but hollow, warred with a path uncertain but authentic. She pictured the small, loving home her mother had created, despite everything. She felt the quiet strength radiating from the woman before her. The truth settled between them, heavy as a stone, yet clear as a mountain spring. She opened her eyes, meeting her mother's gaze. A new resolve hardened her features. "I choose honesty," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "I choose us." A soft, knowing smile touched her mother's lips. It was a smile of release, of shared burden, of a battle finally won. They stood there for another moment, two women bound by a newly forged understanding. The air around them felt lighter, as if a long-held breath had finally been exhaled. Together, they turned. Their steps were slow, deliberate, as they walked back towards the muted sounds of the celebration. The wedding hall waited, holding its breath. From the moment the laughter faded at the wedding, a new, pervasive quiet began. It settled over the town like a fine, invisible dust, coating everything in its subtle presence. The initial flurry of whispers, sharp as broken glass, eventually dulled. They softened into hushed murmurs, then vanished entirely from public earshot. People spoke of other things, or they spoke of nothing at all, when her name arose in conversation. The groom's family, once so ostentatiously visible, retreated behind their high, formidable walls. Their grand house stood perpetually silent, its tall windows like vacant, unseeing eyes staring out at an altered world. No cars pulled into their wide gravel drive. No figures moved through their meticulously manicured lawns. Their absence was a statement, profound and utterly unspoken, a heavy blanket of shame that clung to their property. The entire town understood the message, unspoken, yet clear. The mother, however, did not hide. Each morning, she rose with the sun's first, tentative light, a soft glow filtering through her kitchen window. She moved through her small, familiar home with deliberate, unhurried grace, a rhythm born of years. Her hands, once clenched with a silent, simmering fury that had burned deep within her, now found solace in the simple, repetitive tasks of her day. She walked to her garden, the narrow path worn smooth by countless years of her footsteps. The cool morning air smelled distinctly of damp earth and the sweet, intoxicating promise of awakening blossoms. She knelt among her plants, her calloused fingers gently brushing the cool, dark soil, feeling its life beneath her touch. A gentle hum, a melody from a forgotten lullaby of her own youth, escaped her lips. It was a sound of quiet contentment, not defiance. A soft, tuneless song of deep resilience that resonated within her. She took up her weathered watering can, its metal cool and familiar against her palm, a trusted companion. The water arced in a silver shimmering stream, a liquid ribbon nourishing the thirsty roots below. Each drop seemed to wash away a layer of residual tension, a lingering shadow from the recent, tumultuous past. Her gaze lingered on a vibrant rose bush, its deep red petals unfurling slowly, deliberately, revealing their intricate beauty. They showed no haste, only a steady, natural progression, mirroring her own journey towards healing. She pruned a single yellowed leaf, a small symbolic act of letting go of what no longer served her or her garden. The sun warmed her back, a comforting, steadfast presence against the cool morning air. Her spirit felt lighter, unburdened, as if a great, unseen stone had finally been lifted from her chest, allowing her to breathe freely again. The weeks that followed the wedding had been a strange, unfolding tapestry. Rumors had bloomed quickly, vibrant and wild, spreading through the community like wildfire, then fading into the background like forgotten weeds. The truth, released from the golden box, had done its quiet, devastating work. It had created its own space, its own profound silence where once there had been noise. She remembered the collective gasp, the sudden sharp hush that had fallen over the wedding hall, a moment frozen in time. She remembered the stunned faces, the quiet, swift collapse of their carefully constructed facade. That moment, sharp and clear in her mind, now seemed distant, almost a dream, softened by the passage of days. Here, in her garden, the only judgment was the indifferent, all-seeing gaze of the endless sky. The garden offered a different kind of truth, a more ancient wisdom. It spoke of cycles, of patience, of enduring beauty that persevered through all seasons, through storm and sun alike. Here, life continued, undisturbed by human folly or social disgrace, by the petty judgments of a small town. Only the gentle rustle of leaves and the industrious buzzing of bees broke the profound silence. She spent hours there, tending to each fragile life, each budding hope, each promise of renewal. Her movements were slow, almost meditative, a dance of quiet devotion to the earth. The world outside her garden gate seemed impossibly distant, its judgments muffled by the green, comforting embrace of her sanctuary. She felt the cool earth on her knees, the warmth of the sun on her skin, a grounding, elemental connection that brought her peace. The peace she had thought lost forever was indeed growing again, steadily, surely. It pushed through the rich soil of her being, root by root, leaf by leaf, a quiet, profound victory of the spirit. It was not a sudden, triumphant roar, but a deep, abiding hum beneath the surface of her days, a constant, reassuring presence. She learned to listen to it, to nurture it with the same care she gave her plants. Her daughter had visited often during these weeks, sitting quietly beside her, sometimes just watching, sometimes helping with the lighter tasks. Their conversations were few, but their understanding was immense. A silent language passed between them, a bond deepened by shared experience. The dignity she had fought so fiercely to reclaim now resided within her, unshakable and true. The evening light softened further, painting the sky in hues of lavender and deep, bruised gold. Shadows lengthened dramatically, stretching across the rows of blooming flowers like long fingers. She rose, her body aching gently from the day's work. A satisfying, welcome weariness. A sense of quiet accomplishment settled over her, deep and true, filling her completely. She wiped her hands on her apron, leaving streaks of rich, dark soil, remnants of her labor. The garden had given her back a part of herself, nurtured and whole, a quiet rebirth. For now, the world outside waited, but its urgency had faded, its power diminished, its clamor silenced. And that is where the silence begins. In the quiet that had settled years after the wedding feast, a final piece of the past arrived. The echoes of that night had softened into a distant hum. It came on a Tuesday, delivered by a solemn-faced solicitor. His presence was a hushed formality in her sunlit living room. He offered a brief, respectful bow. Then, he placed a heavy, cream-colored envelope on her polished mahogany table. The paper felt cool beneath her fingertips. It was substantial with the weight of its contents. She dismissed him with a quiet nod. Her gaze was already fixed on the familiar embossed seal. The solicitor retreated, leaving only the soft click of the closing door behind him. Her husband's name, etched in faded ink, adorned the top of the envelope. This was his last testament, a final communication. He was a man long gone, yet his complicated shadow had lingered for years. She sat in her favorite armchair. The worn velvet felt soft against her skin. It faced the garden, where sunlight dappled through the leaves. Slowly, deliberately, she broke the seal. A single sheet of paper, folded precisely, lay within. His distinct handwriting, slightly shaky now, filled the page. The faint scent of old paper rose from the delicate fibers. Perhaps it carried the ghost of regret. He began by admitting the deal. It was a cold, calculated arrangement made in desperation. This pact was designed to secure his family's legacy. It came regardless of the cost to others. He detailed the intricate compromises. He spoke of the quiet betrayals of trust. These words painted a stark picture of the man he had been then. She felt a familiar ache. It was not anger, but a deep, lingering sorrow. That sorrow had once defined their shared existence. The words laid bare the full extent of his choices. They revealed the complex web of obligations he had woven. Each sentence was a careful thread, unraveling a long-held secret. He wrote of the shame. It was a constant, gnawing presence. It had followed him like a shadow, darkening his every triumph. He described the burden of that secret. The corrosive guilt had eroded his peace, year after year. It was a confession, not seeking absolution. It simply laid down a heavy truth for her to bear witness. She remembered the subtle shifts in his eyes. She recalled the moments of strained silence between them. Now, she understood their true, painful origin. The weight of his confession settled around her. It was a quiet acknowledgement of shared, unspoken suffering. Then, the ink shifted on the page. The tone softened almost imperceptibly. He spoke of love. It was not the convenient affection he had initially sought. Instead, it was a profound, unexpected love. It had blossomed in the ruins of his own making. He described her quiet resilience. He spoke of the unwavering dignity that had never bent, even under immense pressure. This love, he confessed, had come too late to mend the damage. It was too late to right the wrongs committed, yet it had been real. It was a powerful force that had haunted his final days. This was a bittersweet truth finally spoken across the years. She read the letter once. Her eyes traced each word, absorbing the bitter honesty of his final thoughts. There was no surge of triumph. No echoing cry of vindication filled her heart. Only a profound, quiet understanding settled within her. The words settled in her mind, heavy as stones, yet bringing a strange calm, as though a long-held breath had finally been released from her own chest. She read it a second time, slowly. She allowed the full, complex weight of his belated honesty to infuse her spirit. She found peace in the clarity. With a deliberate, almost ritualistic motion, she folded the single sheet twice. The creases were sharp, precise. It was a final act of containment for the words. She rose from the armchair, her movements unhurried. She moved towards the lacquered chest that stood sentinel in the corner of the room. From its polished depths, she retrieved the golden box. Its surface gleamed softly, reflecting the muted afternoon light. It was a silent, knowing keeper of all their hidden narratives and shared histories. She opened the lid. Inside, nestled amongst other carefully preserved letters, faded photographs, and small tokens of a life deeply lived, she placed his final confession. The paper lay flat. It was a testament to a journey completed. It was a truth finally told. The past, with all its tangled threads of pain and regret, of desperate deals and love found too late, was now complete. She closed the lid with a soft click. The sound was barely audible in the stillness. The box held its breath, and that is where the silence begins. The echoes of that wedding day, once sharp with unspoken words, now carry a different cadence. Years have softened the edges of memory, smoothing rough corners into gentle curves. Sunlight pours into the small kitchen, illuminating dust motes dancing in the warm air. Ilara, 30 seconds, her hair tied back with a simple ribbon, kneads dough on the worn counter, her movements practiced and calm. A child, Lily 5, her granddaughter, giggles near her feet, building a precarious tower of wooden blocks. The same chipped mugs hang above the sink, the faint scent of flour and old wood still lingering. Yet, the air feels demonstrably lighter, less burdened by unspoken anxieties. Ilara watches Lily, her eyes soft with a quiet, hard-won contentment. She remembers the tightness in her own mother's shoulders, the silent battles fought within these very walls. Now, bright, uninhibited laughter rings freely, a new sound for an old space. Above the old radio, tucked between faded cookbooks on a narrow shelf, rests the small golden box. Its polished surface reflects the afternoon light, a silent sentinel witnessing generations. It holds no threat now, no lingering shadow of retribution or revenge. It is simply a container of remembrance, a vessel for a story finally understood and accepted. Ilara glances at it, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips, a shared secret with the past. Lily, holding up a yellow block. Serious. Mama, look. A sun, it shines for everyone. Ilara, her voice warm, reaching to brush flour from Lily's cheek. A beautiful sun, my love, just like the one outside. It brings light, doesn't it? Lily nods, placing the block carefully on her growing tower. The kitchen hums with their shared presence, a quiet symphony of domesticity and enduring love. Ilara feels the warmth of the dough beneath her hands, a simple, grounding sensation. The air in the kitchen feels breathable, as though the very walls exhaled a long-held sigh, releasing decades of held breath. The weight of past secrets has lifted, replaced by the simple, profound warmth of family, openly shared. The afternoon light stretches, painting new memories onto old walls, promising continuity. Asterisk, asterisk, INT, Wedding Hall, dawn asterisk asterisk. As the last guests departed that wedding night, A profound, almost sacred quiet settled over the grand hall. Pale, hesitant shafts of morning light cut through high-arched windows. They illuminated dust motes dancing in slow, ethereal swirls. Empty tables, stripped of their celebratory linen, stood like forgotten monuments to a vanished feast. A single ornate chair lay overturned near the bridal dais, a silent, poignant testament to a night of sudden, irreversible shifts. She walked slowly, deliberately, through the vast, echoing space. Her soft footsteps barely disturbed the deep silence. The faint, sweet scent of wilting white roses still clung stubbornly to the cooling air. A forgotten napkin, pristine white and intricately folded, lay on the polished marble floor. She paused, then bent to pick it up, her movements unhurried, imbued with a quiet, almost ritualistic grace. They had offered her scraps, the physical manifestation of a deeper, long-held indignity. In return, she had delivered a truth, meticulously prepared and carefully chosen. Her intention was not to inflict a wound, but to meticulously balance a ledger that had remained skewed for too long. The golden box, now gone from the scene, had held far more than mere documents or memories. It contained the accumulated weight of years of quiet struggle, the unyielding strength of a mother's resolve. The profound silence in the grand hall felt as though it held a new, fragile kind of peace, a quiet after the storm. Her daughter's eyes, in that final, revealing moment, had shown a dawning, undeniable understanding. A dignity, long deferred and often denied, had been quietly, unequivocally reclaimed. Some gifts are not designed for fleeting joy or simple pleasure. They are meant for clarity, for a profound and necessary reckoning. They are opened only once, their profound contents echoing through the chambers of memory forever. And the quiet testament of truth, once spoken, remains.